Well, here we go again. The hysteria has started already. The latest manager we are now definitely going to have, according to reports, is the Celtic manager, Big Ange. Don't ask me to say what his surname is, because I'm terrible with that sort of thing. I barely say my own name, let alone someone else's complicated name. But yeah, I must admit this one does feel a little bit more likely after the hysteria of it's going to be Nagelsmann and everyone jumping all over that, to it's going to be Slot and everyone jumping all over that, to now being Big Ange. Does feel a little bit different. Seems an awful lot more likely. Kind of feels like the fit is better. Having listened to a load of different people talking about it, those people that are far more equipped to talk about this sort of thing than I am, it does kind of seem like he would be a good fit for us as a football club. I know there's a big kind of divide at the moment around whether we should be going for a manager who's only experienced in the Scottish League, which is essentially just two teams, to be fair. But the difficulty you've got is Tottenham have really set their sights really high, and the expectations really high on the fact that we've got to a Champions League final and we made that big progression under Pochettino. But the reality is we haven't moved on from that, and the writing was already on the wall towards the end of Poch's era with us. Because we wasn't playing great football, we wasn't doing particularly well, and we were quite lucky. And you need luck to get to these kind of finals. But we were quite lucky in that season to get where we did. So the writing was already on the wall. And I think ultimately Levy and the board got turned over with the idea of thinking we were further forward than we perhaps were. The squad was better than they really was, in their heads. And a win now manager was probably all we needed just to take us to that next level. But what they don't plan for was that next level still meant spending a significant amount of money, which they're not really prepared to do. So now we're stripping it back and going back to basics and saying, where are we? What needs to be done? What work do we need to do? What's our DNA all about? What's going to get the fans back on side? All that kind of thing. But at the same time, not wanting to bow down to the pressure of going back to Pochettino, I guess. So, I don't know. Managers like Nagelsmann, probably a step too far. Slot, I think, would have been a good appointment, having kind of listened to a few other people around that and his ethos and so on. But if he's not prepared to come, then he's not prepared to come. If he still wants to carry on and finish what he started there, to a certain extent you've got to admire that, because loyalty is difficult to come by these days. So that kind of leaves us with the opportunities around this new guy. And then what else you got going on around you? I know Luis Enrique's been mentioned, but that still seems very unlikely, and more likely to go the way we think we're going. I'm not going to get too excited. I'm not going to go over the top and say, oh yeah, this is the answer and all that. But what I will do, if he's confirmed, is I'll support him, because he'll be the manager, and I want him to do well. I want him to do well for my club. But I do fear that nothing really changes whilst you've still got the owners that you've got, unless they're going to do something different, or they're going to manage the expectations of the fans better. Because I feel like a lot of our fan base think we're further forward than we really are. Personally, I think we are a top 10 team. We're certainly not a top 4 team. And teams like Liverpool, Chelsea will do far more next season. And potentially teams like Villa will step it up a gear, considering where they've got to. And even potentially Brighton, who've had a great season. So it's always going to be a lot more difficult, especially when you're almost going back to basics. But all we can do is keep supporting our team, so hopefully this issue can be resolved quickly, because it's dragged on. And I understand all about the end of season, people wanting to see it through till the end, finish off what they've started, and all that before you get into those conversations. And that may well be, what's behind it and what's caused these delays in sort of letting us know where we go. But I'm hoping that now the season is pretty much done, with just the Champions League final left, I guess, that we can kind of start seeing some movement. God knows we need it. We need some detail about what's to come. I've also read about all these players that are potentially on their way out. That's a big ask, moving on all those players. The biggest problem is, of course, you've got to find someone who wants to buy them. Either that, or you're just cancelling contracts, which again has big financial implications. There are benefits to that, obviously, but even so, you're still paying out an awful lot of money for nothing, especially when you've got to replace what you're getting rid of. I think the interesting one for me is Tungai Ndombele. I know I've talked about him several times, but it's really interesting to hear the conversations about him wanting to come back and prove himself and so on. Man, if he could just come back and improve and prove himself properly, what a player he would be. Because you can't knock his ability. Absolutely you can't knock his ability. But his work ethic leaves a lot to be desired. And that's what concerns me the most. Guys on an awful lot of money for that to happen. And that could fund a decent replacement, in my opinion. And then of course you've got the Harry Kane continued saga. So Real Madrid now desperate for him. I totally understand why they would want him. But would Harry Kane really want to go to Spain at this point in his career? I mean, it'd be a great time for him to go. And ultimately it means he's out of the Premier League, so whilst it doesn't particularly help us in the fact that we would lose his ability in our team, but it doesn't make someone else that much stronger that we'd have to worry even more about him and him coming back and just slaughtering us. But does he want to go to Spain? And I guess, you know what that also does is it answers the question around what's important. Are trophies more important in his career than his status as a legend for scoring the most Premier League goals? It's an interesting point, right? Everyone tells us no, he's got to have trophies, he's got to have trophies. well, he's got the opportunity there, hasn't he? If he goes to Spain, he'll definitely win trophies. Their record in the Champions League is formidable. Every other year they win the bloody La Liga, Super Cup and all that. So potentially could pick up a raft of trophies. But will everyone go, but just Spanish trophies? I don't think they would. Bearing in mind, all the trophies that Bale picked up, for instance. But still does beg this question: if he stays at Tottenham for another year rather than going to Spain to win all those trophies, what does that tell you? It tells me that being the most prolific goal scorer in the Premier League is more important. In which case, why would you want to go and chance your arm at someone like Man United, who, they picked up a trophy this season and got close to a second, but it's not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed to do that again next season or the season after, is he? Potentially he could go there and just be in the same boat as he is at Tottenham, especially with Man City winning pretty much everything there is to win all the time, and that's not going to get any easier. So you kind of argue that he may as well stay where he is and just become this legend of Tottenham, legend of England, and legend of English Premier League football, based on the fact that he has absolutely scored more goals than even Alan Shearer with his one Premier League medal. It's just the way I look at it, I guess. Different people, different views, different opinions. It is what it is. But so it's been an interesting week so far this week. Lots of little questions, still lots of uncertainty, but this thing with the Celtic manager seems to be gathering proper pace, and I really can see this one happening. And in which case, all of the people that were or are against it probably need to just go and get behind the manager and see how it progresses and see what we do from there. And if what the Celtic fans are saying is true, we could expect some decent football for a change, which would be fantastic. Something to cheer about, something to get you off your seat, something to get you cheering again and excited, as opposed to the drab football we've been watching that ends up in a bloody loss. So anyway, it's another moan from me on a Monday. Lee's Monday Moan. That sounds like a feature, doesn't it? Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for commenting. I still do read all the comments and try to respond to the majority that I can. And I'll look out for you on the next one. Up the Spurs.